Out of the 20 Primarchs that exist in the Warhammer 40K lore, everybody has their favorites, and usually it gets divided between the Traitor Primarchs and the Loyalist Primarchs. When we look at the background of the Traitors, it's hard to tell who your favorite is because each one of them has such good character development throughout their fall. But when it comes to the Loyalist, it feels a little bit vanilla unless you look at their origin story, and that's what this deep dive is going to focus on. I'm going to give you guys my top 3 favorite Primarchs and their origin stories. If you guys enjoy these types of videos, hit the like button, share with your friends, but let's start off with Sanguinius. Of all the Primarchs, none is more beloved by the mortal masses as the great angel Sanguinius. His angelic form and heroic deeds are still venerated across thousands of planets all throughout the Imperium of Man. Sanguinius isn't just the Primarch of the Blood Angel Space Marine chapter, he was a central player in the tragedy of the Horus Heresy. As he played a pivotal role in the defense of Terra, his sacrifice was crucial to defeating Chaos, and he is the undeniable pillar to the story arc of the traitor Horus. This is why it's so important to hear the legend or the origin story of the Primarch Sanguinius. After forging 20 of his godlike children known as the Primarchs, the great labor of the Emperor of Mankind was thwarted by the Chaos Gods when they assaulted the laboratories on Terra. They stole the gestation capsules of the future leaders of the Emperor's Great Crusade. The Primarchs were cast off from the Immaterium and scattered all throughout the galaxy. In the Segmentum Ultima, a fiery comet crash-landed on the moon of Bal Secundus. This entire region was a radioactive desert. The scarring of the moon's crust hid the enormous crater caused by the capsule holding the young Primarch Sanguinius, the destined leader of the 9th Legion, the Blood Angels. Unbeknownst to the godlike being that emerged from the capsule, the moon he had landed on was once considered a paradise world where the ancient human colonists of the Dark Age of technology lived in harmony with nature. But much like many of the other ancient human colonized utopias, the era known as the Age of Strife disconnected the entire region from Terra and led to a catastrophic civil war that consumed Bal Secundus and turned it into an ionized radioactive wasteland. The young Primarch had come to rest on a hellish environment where the cannibalistic mutant abominations outnumbered the few pure-strain humans who had been fighting a long and fruitless war for survival. These inhabitants were lucky enough to have retained the standard template construct to the armor that resembled that of the future Terran Crusade, as well as a more primitive version of a bolt pistol. Left on their own by the rest of the region, these people cherished the weapons and tools left over from that bygone era. It was these brave and resilient warrior people that discovered the infant, calling themselves the folk of pure blood or simply the Blood. At first the Blood saw the Primarch as a mutant sent from the heavens. His body was altered and tiny wings, like those of ancient Terran myths angels, were sprouting from his back. But unlike the mutants that the tribes were familiar with, Sanguinius appeared like a true angelic child, with almost no imperfections or reason to fear. There was an aura of calming and inspiration that flowed through the child, and the compassion of the Blood finally prevailed, sparing the child's life. Sanguinius was taken in by the Blood, and they quickly realized the superiority of the young Primarch. Like the rest of the sons of the Emperor, Sanguinius grew to maturity faster than a normal human. After only 3 solar weeks, he was as large as a child of 3 Terran years, and he could walk. It is said that at this young age he slew a giant fire scorpion with his bare hands, and that he never once feared the colossal beast's aggression. By the time he was a standard year old, Sanguinius looked and acted like a man in his youthful prime. He could walk without a radiation suit in the harshest areas of the poison wastelands. His wings also matured into enormous, angelic white-feathered wings that allowed the Primarch to fly up and above the rest of the Blood, blocking out the intense desert sun for his people. His wings became as strong as those of the Imperial Aquila, and not even the scorching desert air could stop Sanguinius from flying. Sanguinius grew into a towering yet noble warrior. Standing at double the size of a man, his armor had to be custom-made from the relics of the Dark Age of technology, using the skills passed down by the ancient artisans of Bal Secundus. Soon the long blonde-haired angel flying over the ash waste in his golden armor became a beloved sight and a reminder of his protection. The location of Sanguinius' crash landing was renamed the Angel's Fall, a place that would become holy to all the people of Bal. The godlike charisma and physique of the Primarch didn't stop the Blood from teaching him all that they could, but Sanguinius quickly outgrew his adoptive parents' knowledge. In the use of weapons, he soon excelled his teachers. He could smash a path through a rockfall with the blade of his hand, best wild animals but with a glance, and soar high into the sky on his mighty wings to observe the land below from the perspective of a god. Pretty soon the Primarch's tribe became students to the wisdom and guidance of this demigod. When a wandering band of feral mutants ambushed his tribe, Sanguinius slew them all single-handedly, although they numbered over 100. This was the first time that the members of the Blood had ever seen the Angel truly angry, for he felt his comrades' lives were in danger. When the blood rage overtook him, it was as if nothing could calm his anger. It was the full power of the Primarch that came upon him, and a nimbus of light played about his head. Sanguinius distinguished himself in the fateful years that followed. He soon rose to the pinnacle of the primitive society present on Bal Sagundas, and under his leadership, the pure-blooded Balite tribes united against the infestation of mutants that had for so long plagued the radioactive waste of Bal. With his angelic leadership coupled with his total mastery of physical combat, the tribes drove back the tide of mutant filth that threatened humanity's hold upon the poison world. Under Sanguinius' direction, mankind earned another chance to build civilization upon Bal Sagundas. In time, as a result of his accomplishments, Sanguinius was inevitably worshipped as a god by the humans of Bal. They felt like they owed him so much. They were convinced that paradise would follow in the crimson footsteps of the angel. Yet it was shortly thereafter that fate intervened with the arrival of the Emperor of Mankind. And those were 40 facts on the origin of Sanguinius. Now the second Loyalist Primarch that I want to take a look at, who has a really cool origin story, is Gillan. According to Imperial legend, the Emperor of Mankind created the Primarchs from artificially engineered gene seed using his own genome as a template. He carefully imbued each of them with unique superhuman powers. Imperial doctrines go on to tell how the ruinous powers of chaos spirited away the Primarchs within their gestation capsules, scattering them widely across the galaxy through the warp. After drifting for decades, the capsule containing the developing form of one of the Primarchs, who would later become known as Gillan, fell upon the world of Macragge in the eastern fringe of the galaxy. Macragge was a bleak but not inhospitable world, part of a decaying star empire of ages past, when mankind had inhabited for many centuries since the time of the Dark Age of technology. Its industries had survived intact, and its people had retained an authoritarian but cohesive society. The cities of Macragge were designed in a style unique to the ancient Terran civilizations of Rome and Greece. Massive marble amphitheaters, Tuscan columns, and residential housing blocks all demonstrated the attention to order and detail that was uncommon for the human civilizations of that time. It had remarkably preserved a number of antiquated short-range warp-capable craft, which could be utilized for near-stellar transit, conditions permitting, and its people continued to build sublight spacecraft even during the times of the most intense warp storms. This had allowed the people of Macragge to maintain contact with several neighboring human-settled star systems despite the storm's fury, and so it retained a link to the rest of human space and the knowledge that it was not alone in the darkness. So it was that, when the Primarch's fallen capsule was discovered by a group of magnates who were on the hunt in a local forest, they knew it immediately for a device of advanced technology rather than a thing of superstition and magic. The magnates broke the capsule seal and discovered a strikingly beautiful and perfectly formed child within it, who was surrounded by a glowing nimbus of power. The child was brought before Connor Gillan, one of a pair of nobles who bore the title Council, whose authority governed the most civilized and powerful region of Macragge, and Connor adopted the infant as his own son in a manner not uncommon to his culture, naming him Reboot. The young Primarch grew unnaturally quickly, and as he did so, his unique physical and mental powers became obvious to all. It is recorded by the time of his 10th birthday, Gillan had mastered everything the wisest tutors of Macragge could teach him. His insight into matters of history, philosophy, and science astonished his teachers, while his recall was absolute, and his ability to extrapolate accurate conclusions from fragmentary information was said to border on the inexplicable. His greatest talent, however, lay in the art of war, which was itself treated as a high and laudable science in Macragge's culture. As soon as he had attained his legal majority, Robote's foster father, Connor, immediately granted him command over an expeditionary force sent to pacify the far northern lands of Macragge. Named Delirium, it was a barbarous land of outcast and petty warring microstates that had long harbored mercenaries who raided more civilized lands as often as they hired themselves as foot soldiers to fight their neighbors' wars. Robote fought a brilliant campaign and won both the submission and the respect of the fierce Illyrium warrior bands. But when he returned to his home from the northern frontiers, Robote found the capital of Macragge in turmoil.
During the Primarch's absence, Connor Gilliman's co-counsel, a man named Gillan, had unleashed a coup against Connor, a development far from unknown in history, if in the instance a surprise. Gillan, it transpired, had long harbored designs for undiluted rulership and had conspired with those amongst the wealthy nobility of Macragge who were jealous of Connor's political power and popularity, and also increasingly afraid of his preternaturally precarious foster child's future. These malcontents represented Macragg's ancient regime, an aristocracy whose wealth was manifested by vast estates which were supported by the toilings of multitude of impoverished vassals. Connor, backed by Macragg's industrial magnates, rivals of the old regime, had moved to challenge this balance of power, forcing the aristocracy of Macragge to provide their vassals with increasing living standards and rights before the law, weakening the aristocracy's stronghold on the political system. Connor had also passed legislation that obligated the nobility of Macragge to begin an ambitious program of improving the long-neglected infrastructure of their nation and enlarging the capital city on their own expense. This reform made Connor Gilliman all but unassailable to the common people's eyes, but was highly unpopular among all but a few of the more far-sighted aristocrats. As the Primarch and his triumphant army approached the city of Macragge Civitas, they saw the smoke from a multitude of fires and encountered citizens fleeing from the city in anarchy. And Gilliman learned that Gillan's private army had attacked the Senate House, while Connor and his loyal bodyguard troops had been inside. The refugees each told the same story. The rebel soldiers had attacked the Senate, while a drunken mob, initiated by Gillan, but now out of nobody's control, roamed the city, burning, looting, and murdering. Rubud hurried to his foster father's rescue, leaving his own troops to deal with the drunken rioters without quarters. Rubud personally fought his way towards the center of the city, passing the bloody work of rebel firing squads everywhere in the government district. But at the Senate House, he found himself too late. All was a bullet-ridden and blasted ruin, and even the rebels, it seemed, had fled the scene to join the looting. There in the half-collapsed shelter beneath the building, he found his father dying. For 3 days, the wounded council had directed the defense of the besieged Senate House, even as surgeons fought for his life, following a botched assassination attempt on the Senate floor, which had started the conspiracy's chaotic attack. With his last breath, Connor detailed the extent of Gillan's betrayal to his beloved foster son, and named those whose hands were stained with his blood. Gilliman's cold rage at his foster father's death was unstoppable. With a full backing of his army and the beleaguered citizens of Macragg's capital city, the Primarch crushed the aristocrat rebels, scattering their hireling armies and lining the streets with the hanging bodies of rioters, thereby quickly restoring order to the capital city and surrounding lands. Thousands of citizens flocked to the Senate House, and amidst a wave of popular acclaim, Gilliman assumed the mantle of the sole and now all-powerful Council of Macragge. The new ruler broke the old aristocratic order and stripped from them their lands and titles. Gillan and his fellow conspirators were seized, the ringleaders were publicly executed, and the rest sentenced to hard labor, rebuilding the city they had ruined, stone by hand. It was not a sentence they would long survive. In the new order, loyal soldiers and hard-working settlers were granted rights where the old oppressive aristocracy had once held sway. With superhuman energy and the singularity of vision only a Primarch was capable of executing, the new council reorganized the social order of Macragge, creating a ruthlessly enforced meritocracy where the hard-working prospered and the honorable received positions of high office, and those who broke the law or worked against the good of the whole faced draconic, but faultlessly even-handed punishment. The stagnant and uneven economy was reordered, technology disseminated rather than hoarded by the elite, and the armed forces were transformed into a powerful and well-equipped force. Macragge flourished as never before. One people and one order, united under the people and one order, united under the unchallenged rule of Rubud Gilliman.
Gilliman is a Primarch that truly exemplifies us always thinking about the Roman Empire. Prove me wrong. But now let's move on to the last Primarch, Ferris Manus. As with all of the Primarchs, the story of the Forge Master Ferris Manus begins at the end of the Unification Wars, but before the beginning of the Great Crusade, when the Emperor's gene laboratories were assaulted by the ruinous powers of chaos, and these foul creatures scattered the 20 Primarchs across the galaxy.
For the demigod that would become known as the Gorgon, his gestation capsule landed on the feral world of Medusa. Now, Medusa was a planet lost but not forgotten by mankind. The world was several times larger than Earth, and during the Dark Age of technology, when humanity was spreading across the stars, this world was deemed of great importance to mankind, for within its depths were rare core strata deposits that provided untold wealth and resources for humanity. This led to an incredible feat of mining where the early human settlers created tireless robotic engines that not only dug up the planet's riches, but also protected the entire operation from the predations of rival xenospecies. Now, exactly who these aliens were has been lost to time. Nevertheless, the extracted minerals fed not only the neighboring star systems, but even made its way back to humanity's most glorious forge world, Mars itself. However, when the Age of Strife began and disconnected Medusa from the rest of humanity, just as it did to almost every major planet, the human population left on this rich mining world tried its best to survive the turmoil of the doomed era without resupply or reinforcements from the rest of humanity. This proved terribly difficult, as the planet itself had become a dark and polluted world where its sun rarely broke through and the land of frozen mountain ranges, volcanoes, and boiling hot geysers constantly churned, creating new seas and continents as quickly as they were destroyed. Confronted by the near unlivable surface conditions created by the planet's violent climate, the human survivors devolved into techno-barbarian savages that were forced to migrate across the planet's shifting mountain ranges. As a former territory of Mars, the Medusans retained a dim version of the cult Mechanicus, but ultimately even this degenerated into a superstition-ridden faith, where the pursuit of knowledge was overpowered by strange cybernetic and mechanical mythology. The nomadic human warbands became scavengers more so than creators or any form of scientist. They gathered into mobile semi-tribal clans that centered around massive fortified land crawlers that were recovered and repurposed from the ancient mining and harvesting engines of the past. From these massive vehicles, they raided and foraged for resources while sadly warring amongst each other for whatever scraps they could find. They were a savage and unforgiving people, slavers and killers whom the battle to survive was unrelenting. It was a bloody struggle in which only the strongest prospered. It was in this harsh environment that the Primarch Ferris crash-landed, breaking through the polluted skies and impacting the ice pinnacle known to the locals as Karashi, the highest mountain peak. The arrival of the child Primarch was felt all over the world as his gestation capsule buried itself deep into the mountaintop core, setting off a chain reaction that toppled mountain ranges and created great chasms throughout Medusa. It was this planet-shaking landing that began the legend of the Primarch amongst the locals. Now, what made the location of the Primarch's arrival so important was the mythology behind this accursed land. To the nomadic techno-barbarian clans, the northern polar region of Karashi was a place haunted by slumbering iron-skinned monsters that slaughtered anyone foolish enough to enter their land. The ice that covered this land was black and ever-present. How exactly the young demigod survived all alone is a mystery only he and the Emperor know. But the tribes of Medusa began to tell tales of a wandering warrior with the strength to cast down hulking metal thunder giants, slaughtering murderous machine creatures, and performing superhuman feats of cunning and strength. His greatest action was an epic battle against a great silver worm known as Azeroth. This enormous serpent-like machine stalked the lands of Shadow, a region of the north steeped in superstition, viewed by the techno-barbarian clans as an underworld haunted by ghost spirits and guarded by this giant creature. Ferris tracked the beast for days, hunting it across the dark and shadowy land until it finally caught it. Striking the silver construct repeatedly with his mighty fist, the worm took no damage. The impervious metal engine fought back for days, and the two godlike beings fought one another in what seemed like a futile battle. That is until the young, clever Primarch drew the creature into molten magma. The skin of the great silver engine finally broke, and as it squirmed to death, a portion of the creature's skin splattered on the Gorgon's hands and forearms. Somehow, the metal fused itself to the Primarch's body, and his arms would forever be coated in the creature's impervious skin. It is believed by the Imperial savants that this silver worm was in fact a Necron construct, protected by some form of necrodermis. This allowed him to use his hands to mold and shape molten metal thanks to the xenotechnology. Having killed the most dangerous creature in the Land of Shadows, the Primarch strode forth from this forbidden realm. The fearful clans did not welcome this silver-handed demigod with open arms. Instead, the Gorgon had to batter the scattered clans into submission. Proving to be unstoppable, he quickly took lordship of many of the migrating clans. However, he never quelled conflicts or brought peace to the land. Instead, he demanded the secrets of the technological wonders held by the Iron Fathers of each clan. These were half-tech priest, half-shaman who ministered to their clan's spiritual and mechanical needs. The cunning Primarch enhanced each technological marvel, and through his teachings, the clans forged better weapons and stronger machines with which to wage ever more brutal wars. He allowed these great battles to take place in order to pick out the bravest and strongest warriors of the clans and dive back into the frozen realms of the Black Mountains, leading campaigns that broke open long-sealed vaults and ice-buried territories. They were filled with degenerate mutants, living dead cyborgs, and dark engines of nightmares of ages past. With each new victory, Ferris brought back new technology and riches for the clans of Medusa. Although not a unified people, the Gorgon was seen as a warlord sage that reigned over his planet. That is until the arrival of the Emperor and the fleets of the Great Crusade. And those are the origin stories of my top 3 favorite Primarchs. If you guys have any suggestions for the next Primarchs that I should do, let me know in the comment section below. If you want to take a look at the traders, I already have a video for that, link up above. But I hope you guys are enjoying these deep dives. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.
Oh, if you could put my feet